What you believe actually creates what exists in your reality.
You believed it before it was the case.
Stand out. You can't do that by following everyone else's lead. So many people try to force change their habit without changing their belief. When I realized my fear of failure was so immense, I had to change that belief. I flipped the belief to have more fear of regret. Make changes, pivot, and then go back at it with a different perspective. My unique value proposition that I offer my clients is it's mental, psychological, emotional, tactical. Tactical is only part of it. If you have bad beliefs, you're going to sabotage them over and over and over again. You can instantly become infectious or repelling to people, one or the other.
When it comes to entrepreneurship, innovation, and personal empowerment, Jen Groover is the person I wanted to speak to. Jen, thanks for being here.
So happy to be here. Always love hanging with you.
I love hanging with you and seeing you, but this is the one thing, so we don't want to waste time.
Nope.
What is the one thing business-wise that's made or life-wise that's made the difference for you?
It is when I learned that your beliefs are in direct correlation to your outcome. That what you believe actually creates what exists in your reality.
What is it that when you started on the business journey that you said, this is what I believe?
So I came from a father with some scarcity mindset. He was born when things were not as abundant as they are today. And work ethic was what derived success back then, which I still believe in work ethic. But it was a little bit narrow in the belief that your habits create your outcomes. But it goes deeper than that. And that's what I learned. Your habits are in alignment with your beliefs. So many people try to force change their habits without changing their beliefs. And, it's like the gym. On January 1st, it gets really crowded. By January 21st, it's not as crowded anymore because people try to motivate change in habits to get a different outcome without changing the beliefs. Once you change your beliefs, then it changes your habits more naturally. It's not as forced, it's not as painful. And then that changes your outcomes. But most people always try to change their behaviors without evaluating their beliefs, or changing their beliefs, and therefore always have this yo-yo of life of trying, failing. And so once I realized your beliefs change your outcomes, I started to become a lot more introspective on a daily basis of evaluating my outcomes, and especially the ones I didn't like, what beliefs are attached to those and what needs to change to get a different outcome.
So you had an invention. It did really well. It put you on a path where you're advising all these other companies now how to scale faster, how to get places that they want to be even quicker. What was the belief that you had to believe in first before it came true? Is that the case?
Absolutely. That was the trial and error on myself to realize this philosophy is, in fact, useful, purposeful, and beneficial. So my dad also was in the Marines and had the failure is not an option mindset, which a lot of people think that motivates us. Yes. But if you're a kid with good self-preservation skills, you're going to do everything you're naturally good at and not do things that you could fail at because you're afraid of failing. And so when I realized this, my fear of failure was so immense. I had to change that belief and I had to identify what is a good part of failure. And I flipped the belief to have more fear of regret than I have of failure. So my fear of regret is way worse than my fear of failing. So that was the first part of the change of the belief. And the second part was the value proposition. So I then realized everyone that's successful has failed. It's just how they perceived their failures. So failure, in essence, is just part of the process on the way to success. You have to fail, observe that failure, redirect, make changes, pivot, and then go back at it with a different perspective. And that is where success lies. It's not the actual failure in and of itself. what you do with it, how you regroup from it and move on from it.
And we're both parents and our kids are getting older, but when kids play video games, a lot of parents don't play video games. They have to fail over and over and over and over to achieve something. And kids nowadays
Yeah.
seem to grow up with that as a skill. You talked a lot about, your father who, no fault. There was an operating system that was there.
Yep.
You built your own operating system. What did you do to help your kids with their operating system? What is it like for them?
Well, my kids would tell you that every day is a life lesson by mom. Um, so I did sort of motivational speak my children throughout their childhood, but more importantly, they did gymnastics, and I felt that sport was enormous in having to fail, fall, and get back up.
Mm,
They learned a lot in that sport in the very young stages of life, and their coach was monumental in the philosophy of getting back up and not being afraid after you fall, right? Like you fall off the bars, you fall off the balance beam, you're like, I don't want to get back on. I just got hurt. And so it really pushes you through that point of pain and fear, just reinforcing all of that as they got older. You don't have to be perfect. No one is perfect, but you have to try. And you want to be different. You want to set out to stand out. And you can't do that by following everyone else's lead. So it's scarier there, but you'll get more success there.
one of your books, What If and Why Not, which we'll put on the screen somewhere over here. In it, you talk about asking that question about what if. Does what if help create that mindset that can change your beliefs?
Absolutely. So, one of the biggest shifts in that time period about failure was what if I succeed? So, most people think, what if I fail? And then they go into like, I can't do it. I can't do it because you're thinking of all the worst things. And at that time period, I flipped that belief. What if I succeed? What does that look like? What would my life look like? And so that would put power through those moments of fear versus squandering back into the being afraid and just doing nothing.
And what does your life look like now?
It's literally the life I dreamed. Literally everything that I dreamed. I have time freedom first and foremost. I have financial freedom. I have the ability to choose to be with who I want to be with. So I enjoy life. Like when you're working and you're not supposed to be having fun, I'm having fun. I only work with clients I enjoy working with, and I travel. It's literally what I set out to create in my early 20s is what I'm living today.
Whoa, that's amazing. Okay, tell me how you are helping businesses right now. Oh, and actually, before you do that, I'm going to buck the system. First, tell us the story of the Butler Bag, and then tell us how you're helping businesses right now.
Sure. So the Butler Bag was one of my first successes that kind of put me in a position of guiding other people to success. It was shortly after I rewired my brain by changing my belief system of having more fear of regret than failure. And I created an idea that had I not changed that belief, I probably would have never brought to light. I would have been too afraid to fail. But what happened was my twin girls were infants at the time. I took them to the grocery store, put them down to pay the cashier. They started wailing, screaming, crying. I couldn't find my credit card in my bag. So my bag out in front of everybody and finally found the card. But as I was walking out the store that night, I thought to myself, why do women accept a bucket for a bag? It's literally a bucket. And so as I walked out the store thinking, what can I do to make this better? I went to the place of self-doubt that a lot of people do. Like, I can't draw. I'm not even a stick figure very well. I'm not a designer. Like, who am I to think I could change this problem? And as I was reinforcing this new belief pattern, I did something one night that I did since I was probably 4 or 5 years old. I unloaded my dishwasher. But because you change your brain, you change your beliefs, your perspective begins to also change. How you see the world changes. So, never in my life prior to that moment did I see a multi-million-dollar idea in a dishwasher. But that night, I was unloading my utensils out of the dishwasher tray, the little six compartment one. They've changed a lot since then, but back in the day, it was a little 6 compartment caddy. And I looked in there and I said, wow, that's how I want everything in my handbag to be structured, organized. When you look in the dishwasher, you can see the knife, fork, and spoon. You don't have to dig to figure out which one's which. So I took the dishwasher tray out of the dishwasher, stuck it in my handbag, got all my contents, and heard like praise noises coming out of the bag of this is it. Like I figured this out and turned that quickly into what became the Butler Bag company. Built it to 1 million in the first year, 10 million in the second, and eventually sold it to Avon. So because of all that, this is, by the way, I think it's really important to say, way before social media existed and people could do what they're doing on social media. Yeah.
Right.
Uh,
And imagine if you had social media, maybe even faster, who knows?
right. It would have been, I believe, a lot faster, but I did learn with the help of you how to really work in the media and create media hope and pitch yourself and go on air. Because of that and other successes that happen from there, clients come to me to ask me to help them scale their businesses faster. So it's not all just tactical. My unique value proposition that I offer my clients is it's mental, psychological, like emotional, and tactical. So the tactical is only part of it. If you have a bad mindset and bad beliefs, no matter what tactical strategies you have in your back pocket, you're going to sabotage them over and over and over again. So
Mm.
they all have to come together. Your beliefs have to align with the strategy at the same time.
And it's interesting you brought up the emotional part. I don't hear people talking as much about that. And I feel as business owners or entrepreneurs, we have to be managing our emotions, not only act out of emotion, but also how we react to everything that happens, all the ups and downs. What are some of your quick thoughts on emotions in
Yes. So
business?
how to respond instead of react, right? That's in my other book, The More Method, I talk a lot about this in the emotional intelligence component of being successful. And from a standpoint of mindset and belief, your mindset creates your emotions, and your emotions then create the energy that you emit to other people. So you can instantly become infectious or repelling to people, one or the other, but people feel it when you walk in the room. So if you can control your mindset and your beliefs, you can emit a positive emotion that people are naturally attracted to. Huge strategy or huge advantage in business. But on the reaction side, in business, things go wrong. And if you're going to react to somebody in a negative way, you can destroy your business too. So, one of the things I always talk about is learn to respond to things versus react to things and navigate with those emotions of emotional intelligence, or no one's going to want to work with you. No one's going to want to work for you either. And it will become a
Mm.
repelling emotion, again, sabotaging your business. So, your mindset it connects to the emotion, which connects to the energy that brings you a better outcome. Tactical, anyone can figure out. But to really win and be a successful entrepreneur, personality, the mindset, the energy, all of those things are paramount.
And it's interesting as we think about leaders who, I don't know if we want to say emotional, but people always point to a Steve Jobs who would pit people against each other and yell and scream and all that. And we get to decide what kind of leader we want to be.
Right.
Is there a particular leadership style that you appreciate or certain leaders that you think are great leaders that we don't get to always hear about?
Pete Carroll, who was the coach of the Seattle Seahawks, at the prime of him coaching the Seahawks, was somebody I really looked up to because he led with confidence and demanded respect without instilling fear in people. My dad was a fear guy, right? Like he instilled fear in people, and that repels me. Um, and I like when people are stern and can have a playful side, but a serious side, the balance between all of those elements of emotion. But it's really about being able to command respect by who you are, not demanding respect from people. So I mentioned my daughter's gymnastics coach. He actually was pretty famous gymnast. He was an Olympic gymnast. His name is Bill Roth. He was hip hop for the 76ers. Um, his leadership style was always so inspiring to me. And I actually wound up meeting him when I was a fitness competitor. He would train at the same gym as me. And I only knew him from he was hip hop for the Sixers then. We were in this Russian gym where the coaches were really hard on the girls and demoralizing, in my opinion. And he would come up behind the kids and say, "Good luck, good job," like encourage them. And you could see how much they respected him, not their actual coaches. And I would always say this really interesting story about manifestation. We were training in Delaware, and I live in Pennsylvania, which isn't too far from Delaware. But I would always think to myself, this guy would be such a great coach. He'd be such an amazing coach. And my kids were about 7 at a gym in the outskirts of Philadelphia. And they were getting upset by this coach who was always screaming and yelling, the woman that owned the gym. It was very repelling to them too. And they were about to quit because they have stomach pain before going for fear of being yelled at. One day, right around this time period where I was encouraging to stick with it, I hear this voice in that gym and I recognize the voice. It was literally 15 years later. And I looked and it was Bill. I haven't seen him since the times of training together literally in 2000. And there he was buying the gym that my kids were a part of. And he became their coach. I literally manifested it from when I was like in my 20s.
You believed it before it was the case, and there it is. It showed up. That's how it works?
I mean, that was pretty random, right? Like, what are the chances of that happening?
What are the chances? But that's how it works,
That's
right?
how it works. I validated it again for myself.
Thank you for being today's game changer.
Thank you for having me.